The ChabadPulse podcast discusses serious issues and interviews guests in a free-form, open manner, occasionally touching on adult topics that may be unsuitable for children's ears.
Are grade shuls a positive development for our community? Are young men ready for marriage? And is it time to start educating children about love and relationships according to Torah and Halacha before the secular culture gets there first? We discuss all this and more on this episode of the ChabadPulse podcast featuring Rabbi Mendy Hershkop. Let's get the show on the road. Hi there. This is episode 3 of the ChabadPulse podcast. I am your host, Shalom Nemenov, and we are so glad that you decided to join us again. You may have noticed that the intro music has changed for the podcast. That's due to your feedback. A lot of you had comments about the music. They said it was too long, so we responded because that's what this podcast is about, responding to feedback, being part of a conversation. So we fixed it, and I hope you like this one. I think I like it a lot. You also may have noticed that we're late again with the podcast. Again, it's a learning process. Running a podcast is technically demanding, or maybe it's just for me. Maybe I'm just not that good at it. But we are learning, we're growing, and like I said, the gap we cut the gap in half, so that's progress. And hopefully by the next time around, we'll be exactly on schedule, and we'll keep that going. Here's also where I would have played the voice notes that I solicited asked for last week. Unfortunately, my mistake, I neglected to clarify exactly how long we needed those voice notes to be. And because of that, a lot of the voice notes we got were too long. They were thoughtful, they were passionate, they were interesting and insightful, but they were too long. We'll be clear this time. We need something a little shorter, 30, 40 seconds, maybe max a minute. And we really love to have you be part of the conversation. So if you have something to say, please say it and send it to us at ChabadPulse@gmail.com. Today's guest is Rabbi Mendy Hershkop. He's a man who wears many hats, but for the purposes of our discussion today, we're going to focus on his roles as a rabbi of one of the many new grade shuls that populate our communities. And he's also a teacher of chosson classes. And full disclosure, Rabbi Hershkop is the rabbi of my own grade shul, and he's the person I consider to be my personal rav. Let's jump in. So let's jump right in. You are a rabbi in a grade shul. For those unfamiliar with the concept, a grade shul is a shul put together by a group of friends, usually from the same age, usually from the same grade, who found the shul so that they can daven together and do other things together, have classes, have shiurim, farbrengens. I'm part of one. Many people today are part of one, and you, Rabbi Hershkop, are the rabbi of one. So, our first question to you is, what are some of the things that you're seeing as the rabbi of a grade shul? What are some of the positives, some of the negatives? In general, do you think that this is a positive development for our community?
I certainly think it's a positive development for our community. It brings people together. We'll start with the few positives. There's a lot more people that are learning Torah, that are attending shiurim, that are involved and invested in a shul, which is in and of itself a holy thing, a kedushadik thing, which otherwise they would have no involvement. There is a large group of young men in our community that have no interest for one reason or another going to 770 or some of the mainstay establishments in our community. However, they feel a lot more comfortable in going to their grade shul, their class shul, and they can express themselves. And some of these people actually are hosting shiurim in their homes or sponsoring them and are involved in the shul in one way, shape, or another, which in other ways they would never be involved in a shul. And every shul has its uniqueness. I can only speak for our shul, but you take our shul is a wonderful place, a large collection of guys. Everybody's different, like the Gemara says. Just like people don't look the same, they don't think the same. So we have a tremendous amount. The diversity in the shul is very, very good. But for example, we don't speak during Kriyas HaTorah. We try not to, and that's a phenomenal thing in our shul. It's a source of pride. It's a source of pride for myself and the entire shul. And for example, our shul and many shuls in the neighborhood have a gemach. which our shuls, it's called the Helping Hand Foundation, which before Yom Tovim checks are given in a very quiet and discreet manner to those that need it, and it's a decent amount of money, and it really helps.
So that's a pretty strong defense of the concept of the grade-shul.
Correct.
A pretty strong one. As a member of the grade-shul, in full disclosure, Rabbi Hershkop is actually the rabbi of my grade-shul. I tend to agree with this, but people have complaints about it. They say things like, "Oh, a shul has to have multiple generations in it. People have to daven with their fathers and their grandfathers, and there have to be little children there. And you're not getting the full experience if you're not davening in that kind of shul." Is that something that you agree with, or
I disagree with? Because at the end of the day, your average 20-something-year-old guy doesn't want to go to these shuls. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them feel disenfranchised. Number one, they say a story. I heard the story about the Shagas Aryeh, I heard the story about Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz, and I heard the story about the Maggid of Mizrich. I don't know which one it happened to. Was it all three? But it certainly did happen. And apparently, when they were children, there was a large fire in the home, and it consumed the home. And he saw his father crying after the fire, and their parents were all spiritual people, not necessarily very material. And he asked his father, why is he crying? Is it just the physical home that burns? So his father said, no, they had a ksav yichus. The yichus would mean the genealogy, all the way up to family tree, all the way up to David HaMelech. And now that got consumed by the fire, and for that he cried. And that ate him up. So either Rabbi Yonasan or the Shagas Aryeh or the Maggid of Mizrich, which was, there's very three different perspectives. I mean, the Maggid and Rabbi Yonasan are slightly close, but the Shagas Aryeh and the Maggid probably very two different paths. But he said, don't cry, it'll all start from me. I'll start it again. And we'll have, we'll restore glory, and we'll bring back greatness. At the end of the day yes, a lot of the people in these shuls are married and starting families, and God willing, those that are not will be married soon, and they will also start families. So within a couple of years, you're going to have that next generation. You're going to have the birds chirping and the kids running around and making a mess. And even in our shul, which we only have a few of them, but we still, get a few kids here and there, and it's just a matter of time, and we're going to have that. That's not an excuse not to, give people the opportunity to express themselves, and many of them are doing it in a positive and holy way as well, by attending shiurim, by, you have certain people in the shul that if you look at them in the street, you would think that they're all very chilled, but, they're adhering to chitas and things like that, or they specifically don't talk during davening.
And you believe that's because they're part of a shul, they feel more connected to a community in general?
Correct.
Okay, that's definitely something that that I would tend to agree with myself. My own experiences in this issue, in this matter, are I don't know if they're typical, but I think they're pretty. There's a lot of it. When I was 21, 22, 23, I did not like going to shul. I didn't want to go to shul.
What was the reason?
My options were 770 or old little shtibel that my father used to go to. And neither of them was very appealing to me. I mean, they're still not. And then comes a great shul, and I had somewhere to go. So that obviously, I think a lot of people can relate to that experience. However, and I don't know if, I'm sorry for, I guess, repeating the question in a different way. There is the concept of a community shul, where people of different life, of different experiences, different age levels, they get together and they share with each other. And that's part of being a larger community as well. Because you don't end up only focusing on the concerns and the issues of one group of friends, one age group or whatever. It's a whole community. It's a slice of the entire community. And do you think there's any concern of people being cut off from the larger community by forming their own little communities in the grade shuls?
I don't think so, and allow me to explain. I think that the grade shuls, each one being its own community, is not divisive. It actually unites us. It brings us together, and it makes Crown Heights a better community. Unfortunately, as we all know, Crown Heights there is no one Crown Heights. There's no one community. There is no one authority that everybody looks up to and respects and will adhere to. Unfortunately true. Besides for the Rebbe, okay? And then everybody has their different interpretations, so that goes out the window as well. However, when it comes to large communal events, like for the Lag BaOmer parade, or when they block off Eastern Parkway and they get the whole community together, look at the bottom of that sign. Who's it sponsored by? Every single shul in Crown Heights, or most of the grade shuls or these type of shuls in Crown Heights. So very much getting involved and many of the time footing the bill. So for someone to suggest that there's 80 or 90 shuls in Crown Heights, if that's the accurate number, and even if it's a little bit less, it's somewhere there. That's dividing the community. They're just either they have a self-interest in everybody coming back to 770 so they can control people's minds, which with the internet it's impossible to do today, or they're just out to lunch. And then you have, for example, a shul like Beis Shmuel that I've been into for a kiddush once or twice, but I know that before Pesach they throw out they dish out a 6-digit figure of tzedakah for Kimcha de Pischa, not for their people, for people in Crown Heights. So that's one, and then you have many shuls getting involved in these type of projects of helping people out and kicking into high gear. For example, Hatzalah had a fundraiser. They had that Shabbos Hatzalah thing.
Right. So
pretty much in every shul, or at least if it wasn't done, it should really be done in every single shul. An announcement, an appeal went out, and people donated. I mean, this is for a great community cause, and it was done by all of these communities within. I believe that this makes our community bigger and stronger.
That's again, I would tend to agree with that, but I'm biased as well. So it's good to hear. It's good to hear that from that perspective. As the rabbi of a great shul, your crowd is young. You have Bachrim, but I think at this point the majority of our shul is married already, and so at this point you're getting questions, you're getting asked for insight, you're getting asked for advice about some of the issues that people are facing. What are some of the things that young people in our community are dealing with these days? Young couples, young unmarried people, young fathers, young mothers.
So we'll start with the young couples. So I would like to say that I'm not very old myself. So it's not like I'm 50, 60 years old that everybody's so young and I can give you Zadie-like, sage-like advice. But I'm just a couple of years older than the guys in the shul. But every once in a while you have the shalom bias issue. Someone got married, got married, and it didn't really kick off on the right foot, or it's like the sea. It's stormy one day, it's nice the other day. So sometimes people need a little bit of insight with that. They want a perspective, a guidance, and where to turn, what to do, what would be their best option. And I try mainly to listen, and if I have anything insightful, I will share it with them. And most of the time, it's just knowing where to forward them to, who's the right person to talk to, and where you can get help for that particular problem. And then obviously parnasa is something. Some people when they're getting married and they have a child or two, the bills start piling up. So that's something that sits on everybody's mind. Housing in Crown Heights. Those that are married and now are expecting a child or have even 1 or 2 children, that one-bedroom apartment's not enough in Crown Heights. As everybody knows, apartment hunting is really, really difficult. So that's something that people are challenged with. And also some people have their challenges beruchnius, which if they have a decision to make, how important is to keep this din, or how important is it to keep this minhag, or this. A din is obviously important. There's no crossing that line. But how important is it to keep the minhag or the chumrah and things like that? And for me, the hard part is to answer some of these questions because I am not in any way, shape, or form on a higher spiritual ground than those that are talking to me, and sometimes not emotionally either. So
I doubt that's true, but okay.
But I try. You do your best. As for me, the goal for me, and sometimes I fall short of it, is to be able to relate to every single person that walks through the door of the shul.
Relate. Meaning how? To understand what they're going through. To
understand them, to have some form of common ground, to be able to have a meaningful conversation, not just like, hi, good Shabbos, how was your week? Good? Okay, have a nice day, and then that's it. To be able to have some sort of sprach, a language with that person, that he should feel comfortable if he needs to. I don't want to be invasive at all. I don't want to put my nose where it doesn't belong, but if someone needs something, they should be able to bring it up and talk about it.
If the grade-shul phenomenon keeps going, there's going to be more and more of a need for people like you, shul rabbis, to provide this level of guidance. I mean, that's a lot of people. Are there enough people who are capable of doing this kind of job?
I believe there are, but then again, every shul is looking for something else. You're looking for a specific person. I know in our shul, for example, they didn't. There's a lot of people that, let's say, can learn a lot more than I can, but they didn't want them for this particular. It's how you relate to this crowd, how you can blend and mesh, and at the same time be people's friend, but at the same time garner a little bit of respect. And you have to be able to balance all that. It's not just about being, being learned or something like that. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't paskin halachas. I have no grounds to. I'm not allowed to. Al pi din. You have to, besides for having a large knowledge of halacha and an intricate knowledge of the paiskim, Torah Beis Yosef on every sugya, Shulchan Aruch, and the nice kalim. You also have to have shimush. You have to have done this by a rav, sit by a rav, and be trained. So I don't have that, but I look at myself as a facilitator.
But also, it doesn't feel like that particular role was necessary for this.
Yes, it's something that more, I know of one person in this neighborhood that's, it's about in his mid-30s. He happens to be a tremendous Talmud Chacham, 2 feet on the ground, down to earth, a real big Talmud Chacham, and a real Be'etzem Chassidus Yid. And I chastise him all the time how because the knowledge he has, he probably knows how to learn more than many Rabbanim, and I know I'm going to take slack for that, but you can put that out there. He mamish know. I mean, every time I asked him a shayla, like on the spot, the sugya, the Gemara, Mefarshim, the Shulchan Aruch, but he doesn't have shimush, and therefore he doesn't want to paskin any shaylas or anything like that. And incidentally, his father is a big rav also. So I push him all the time. I tell him, for you not to do that is a crime. There's young people in this neighborhood. They need a younger face. They need someone that they can.
I hear all the time from people that there just aren't enough good rabbanim, and a good obviously meaning someone they can speak to, who knows the halacha, who knows what people are going through, who can talk to them.
There's a lot of people that know. There's a lot of most of the rabbanim, if not all of them, know halacha. We're not right. Whichever side of the fence you're on.
There's a lot of demand. There's a lot of demand.
But for example, I teach chosson, and we're going to get into that soon. And I have a chosson calling me up on a Friday that he has a shayla that was already given in by the rav. And he called him, and he finally got hold of him an hour or two before Shabbos. And the Rav was like, "Oh, I'm not in town. You have to somebody was home to give him back the shayla." He barely got it to a Rav before Shabbos, and most of the Rabbanim in Crown Heights either weren't here or didn't pick up the phone. And one particular Rav finally got through to, and he answered his question. But so that is, we're not taking away from the ones that exist. They all have their milas and chosronos as human beings, but they're definitely an approachable young. A halachically sound and down to earth young man, younger guy is definitely something that we need.
Okay, so you mentioned chosson classes, so let's pivot to that. You give chosson classes. You've been doing it for how long?
I would say about 5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years. So that's enough time and enough clients, I think, to give a basic answer to this question. It's a broad one. Are young men today ready for marriage?
It's a very broad question, and I don't think there's one right answer. I think it's a case-by-case basis. Some are and some aren't, and that's really individual based. I mean,
obviously, numbers, but do you believe that there's enough of them who aren't? That it's an issue community has to be dealing with? There are
some that are not, and that have the wrong perception of what marriage is, either because of exposure to materials that they should have never been exposed to at a young age. And that shaped their mind of what marriage is supposed to look like, ben ish le'ishtay, or some people are just not always so mature, so that could be something. And some people had to overcome, have a difficult journey, and they had to overcome certain bumps in the road, and they're just not holding there yet. So, but there are plenty of young men in this neighborhood that are ready for marriage.
What does ready for marriage mean, though, in your mind?
Listen, Rabbi's machshavis belavish, and ultimately the Eibishter's plan is gonna prevail. But it's somebody that has purpose, somebody that wakes up in the morning with a purpose. He has goals. He's looking forward to accomplish something, and he wants to build a home, and he wants to raise a family. That's a very general outline, but that's somebody that's ready to get married. That's somebody that has responsibilities. He has something to wake up for. He has to, either whether he owns a business or he's working in a business, but responsibilities he has. He knows, he's been around. He knows what and he knows what responsibility is, and you're ready to get married. There's no...
What about on an emotional level, meaning able to, emotionally be there for a wife?
Again, that would go person by person, but I think most people have the emotional capacity. Unless, again, somebody that had an emotional crisis or a trauma when they were younger and it's untreated, it is a problem and it will affect his relationship with his wife. There's no doubt about it. But for people that didn't have that, so if somebody did and it was treated, you could still have a very good marriage, and many people don't have an emotional crisis or trauma, lurking in the background, and they could be there emotionally for their wives. I do believe that for the most part, most marriages are decent. And I don't have a good gauge to measure this, but
right.
I hear feedback from the chosson. Now, I'll let you in on something that there's this discussion when you teach a chosson or a kala teacher teaches a kala, do you follow up? Right? So,
right.
7 days after the wedding, are you going to, the kala teacher, is she going to call the kala and be like, hey, how you doing? Is everything okay? Did everything work out? Or 30 days later or 3 months later. So some kala teachers I know are very firm about that. And they have a point. Their point is that some people are shy. Some people are not going to come forward. We learn lo yabaysh and lamed, but some people are shy and they won't come forward with a problem. So they say, let's nip it in the bud. Like it says in the Agada by the Einei de Elisha, by the child that doesn't know how to ask, at psachloi. Sometimes you have to create an opening.
You have to start. You have
initiate.
To get them talking.
Yeah. So and they feel that if you initiate, and they have successfully thwarted problems that way, to their credit. And then there's the other perspective, which is, I don't want to be invasive, because if everything is going well, imagine, you just got married and things are doing well, Baruch Hashem, and I call you up, assuming that I'm going to do chosson classes with you, which I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's already up to you. It's all about the client, right?
When you need a deposit.
No, Mirza Hashem, let's get engaged so we can cross that bridge.
Mirza Hashem.
So the bottom line is, there's another perspective, which is, don't be invasive. I told you what I know. I told you what I feel you should know. And if I don't hear from you, I assume things are going well.
No news is good news.
No news is good news. Now, the mila of that is that if things are going well, and I drop a call to you a month or two later, I'm like, hey, how's everything going? How's your intimate life? How's this? How's that? And you're going to look at me like, are you mad? Are you normal? I can get that reaction. But on the other hand, you could also be saving somebody's marriage if it comes to that. So I prefer the latter. I prefer to mix out, but I do tell them in the last class that I mention this to the chossanim, and I say I'm not the guy that's going to come knocking on your door a month, 3 months, 6 months into marriage, and you don't have to come interview with me again and talk to me. I'm not going to do any of that.
There's no follow-up quiz.
Exactly. However, I'm telling you that as a young, mature person that's ready to get married, lo yabaysh and lamed, if you need help and you're not going to get help, the problem is just going to get bigger. They're not going to go away. And if you feel that I can help you at any time and any day, anywhere, and no matter what it is, call me. Many of the time, I don't have the answers to it, but I view myself as a facilitator. I may know...
you know who to call.
I know, the lady here, the guy here that can call and help you out.
Okay. Obviously, chosson classes, and like I said, I haven't taken one yet, but I understand that it covers a lot of different topics. But the biggie, obviously, is intimacy. That's the whole point. At this point, do you find that when the people that you're teaching, they already have preconceived notions?
Absolutely.
And is that a problem?
Yes, it is. Listen, we live in a generation where information is at the palm of your hand, and kids before 10 years old sometimes, depending on which home they're from and how strict the rules are from the parents.
Often that's just by chance.
Often that's just by, and even with parents who are very strict, they have friends. They have access when they're not home, and when the parents are not home, and there's a device that's snuck into the home until you find it. So that's why raising kids, you have to obviously be conscious and alert, and you have to think about chinuch for 30 minutes a day, like that Hayom Yom from the Rabbi Rashab. It's a chayva, it's an obligation, at least 30 minutes, and you need a lot of siyata d'shmaya. But a lot of children, I'm talking like 11, 12, 13, 14 already, which is too young, way too young for this, but they're getting exposed to to images and videos that they should not be getting exposed to, or they read novels even, and they have a very distorted view and concept of what love is and what relationships should be. And it definitely has an effect, even on growing up, even if you're 20 plus years old and ready to get married, 100%.
Because you're getting someone in your class, let's say they're 24 years old, 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
For 15 years, for 14 years, they've been absorbing a non-Torah narrative about all this.
Correct. And a very detrimental, not only non-Torah, detrimental
narrative.
Even for someone who's completely secular. Like, so for example, some of these videos that Bachrim watch and young kids are watching are detrimental to the 10-year-old that's growing up in Texas somewhere that's not a Yid. You shouldn't be watching it. It can't help. But this is that information's out there. So
that being the case, do you believe? I mean, there's only so much you can do when someone sits in your class after 15 years of absorbing that message, that story. Isn't it time that we got there first?
It's definitely.
I guess I'll ask it differently. How much easier would it make your job if someone started telling the story that you tell people who are sitting in your class when they were 9 or 10 years old?
It definitely could help. I don't know if it would make it easier, because at the end of the day, the stuff is appealing. It's a taiva. Like it says, it's a taiva to the eyes, and if a taiva frekmanish concussions, we don't have to. I mean, why young men have taivas to see different images and different videos, we don't have to explain that here. So this problem would still exist regardless if we put it into our school system at 11, 12, 13 years old through the scope and lens of Torah. However, is it something that should we throw in the towel and not do it? It's a thought-provoking idea, and it's something that you need to get the minds of great educators, rabbanim, poskim, halachic authorities, to make sure that it's halachically sound.
Of course.
And you need to get educators and psychologists, and they all need to be sitting in one room and outlining this. And if perhaps, you get a summer or retreat where these people are sitting for a couple of days and working for that same task and making a curriculum, for 11, 12, 13, and, going through yeshiva, this thing could be a phenomenal idea. But then again, I don't have the layout for that, and I'm not the one to say that we should or shouldn't do it. But just to give you a little example of perspective of how a child hears something. I used to teach 8th grade in a local yeshiva here in Crown Heights, and we went on a grand trip at the end of the year, and we had a small class of about 15 talmidim, and I rented a Sprinter, I don't know, I think it's a Ford, but it's a large van. It can fit 15, 20 people comfortably, and we took barbecue and stuff with us, and it was a nice day. And as we're heading to wherever we were going, waiting at the red light on the corner, and there was a man and a woman on the corner, and they were kissing each other. And obviously the kids took notice. I didn't say anything, but the kids took notice, and they started talking about it. And the more immature ones were like giggling and like, look what they're doing. And the more mature ones were, like, you guys are such babies, come on, And they asked me what I think about it. And I was thrown off. I was thinking that if I'm going to give it too much attention, they're just going to dwell on it the whole time. So I figured I'm going to deflect it. But now they want to know what I think about what just happened. So I told them I need a few minutes to think. I don't have a clear answer. And I continued driving, and they carried on to whatever they were doing. And a few minutes into my into the drive, I dive into the Eibusha. I actually remember saying, Hashem Sfasei Tiftach, just open up my my mind and give me something tangible to say. And I told them that what they did was a beautiful thing, but they did it in a very disgusting way. For when someone gets married, it's a very beautiful thing for a husband to kiss his wife, but it should be done within the confines of your home, of your room. It's in a private setting, in a modest setting, and that could be very romantic and very beautiful. And in fact, a husband is supposed to give his wife this type of attention. It's a good thing.
It's supposed to be affection.
It's supposed to be affection. I didn't say that to them, but I said the concept of a husband and wife displaying affection to one another is a beautiful, beautiful thing. However, the manner in which they did it out in the public street, that's disgusting. And they accepted that answer. They understood it, and the conversation, and they just walked away from it. Like, it satisfied their 13, 14-year-old curious minds, and we moved on. Apparently it was the right answer.
That sounds like the kind of thing, that the story like that, a message like that, that sounds like the beginning of helping children understand this thing that they're going to discover on their own otherwise.
And unfortunately, they're discovering from the wrong sources.
100%.
But then again, this is such a delicate manner that it really has to. It's like a malachas machshavas. You would have to have the great educators, halachic authorities, and psychologists, and all in the same room, brainstorming to the same goal, to be able to package this in a frum, Talmudic way.
Okay. Rabbi Hershkop, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And hatzlacha rabba with everything you do.
Thank you. The pleasure was mine, and thank you for having me.
Thank you again to Rabbi Hershkop for stopping by. I thought that was a fascinating conversation, and I hope you did as well. If you did, and you have something, if you have a response to share, you have something you'd like to say, please send it to us. Please write to us via email, or share a voice note with us via email like we discussed at the top of the show. Or you can comment on the website itself, ChabadPulse.com. Every podcast episode is an article with a comment section where you can comment, and we hope to grow a productive, pleasant commenting community there. Excited to announce that next episode is going to feature Rabbi Manis Friedman, and we have a conversation that continues on some of the things that we discussed today. We hope you'll join us for that. We hope you'll enjoy that. Thanks for listening, and let's keep this conversation going.